Chapter 1. The Servant's Dawn. The cold marble pressed against Andrea's knees as she scrubbed the entrance hall floors. Her hands moved in practiced circles, the rough brush wearing away at skin already raw from yesterday's work. Blood seeped from beneath her broken fingernails, mixing with the soapy water. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Stopping meant punishment, and Andrea had learned long ago that punishment from Zaylin Ashcroft came in forms that left no visible marks but carved deep wounds into the soul. 4 days. She had 4 days left until her 19th birthday. 4 days until the fading claimed her completely. Andrea paused for just a moment, pressing her palm against the ache in her chest. The coldness had started 3 weeks ago, a chill that settled into her bones and refused to leave no matter how close she stood to the fire. Her wolf hadn't come. 18 years of waiting, of hoping, of believing that maybe tomorrow would be different. But tomorrow had become today over and over again, and still she remained empty, hollow, wolfless. In a world where your wolf defined everything, where it determined your rank, your worth, your very right to exist, Andrea had nothing. Still scrubbing like the pathetic little mouse you are. Andrea's shoulders tensed at the voice. She didn't need to look up to know Jexina stood in the doorway, probably wearing one of her expensive gowns, probably looking at Andrea with that mixture of disgust and satisfaction that had become so familiar over the years. "The Great Hall needs to be perfect for tonight," Andrea said quietly, keeping her eyes on the floor. "The lunar ascension ceremony. Oh, I know what tonight is." Jexina's heels clicked against the marble as she approached. "Tonight is when the entire pack sees what you really are. Tonight is when even you can't pretend anymore." Andrea's grip tightened on the brush, but she said nothing. Speaking back only made things worse. Silence was survival. Jexina crouched down, her emerald silk dress pooling around her like water. Andrea could smell her perfume, expensive and floral, so different from the harsh soap that was all Andrea was allowed. "Look at me, stepsister." Andrea's training warred with her exhaustion. Finally, she lifted her head and met Jexina's eyes. Her stepsister was beautiful in the way wolves were meant to be, all confidence and grace, her auburn hair falling in perfect waves, her skin glowing with the health that came from a powerful wolf living just beneath the surface. "There she is," Jexina said softly, her smile cruel. "Mother wants to see you in her study. Immediately." Andrea's stomach dropped. Zaylin's study was where the worst conversations happened. Where decisions about Andrea's life were made without her input. Where she was reminded, over and over, exactly how much of a burden she was. "I need to finish. Did I ask what you need?" Jexina stood, brushing imaginary dust from her dress. "Mother." "Study. Now." Andrea set down the brush with shaking hands and rose to her feet. Her knees protested, bruised and stiff from hours of kneeling. She wiped her wet hands on her gray servant's dress, the fabric so worn it was nearly transparent in places. Zaylin would comment on that too, probably, on how Andrea couldn't even take care of her clothing properly. She followed Jexina through the manor, through hallways she'd cleaned 1,000 times, past rooms she was only allowed to enter for scrubbing and dusting. The Ashcroft Manor was beautiful in the way that wealth made things beautiful. All polished wood and crystal chandeliers, paintings of important wolves who had accomplished important things. Andrea's father had once walked these halls, before Zaylin, before everything changed. Jexina paused at the study door, her hand on the ornate handle. She glanced back at Andrea, and for just a moment, something flickered across her face. Not quite guilt, but maybe its distant cousin. "She's been planning this for weeks," Jexina said quietly. "Tonight. Whatever happens tonight. She's been planning it." Before Andrea could ask what she meant, Jexina knocked twice and pushed open the door. Zaylin Ashcroft sat behind her desk like a queen on a throne. She was beautiful in the way winter was beautiful, all sharp edges and cold precision. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, not a strand out of place. Her blue eyes swept over Andrea with the kind of assessment a person might give livestock at market. "Sit," Zaylin said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Andrea sat. The chair was uncomfortable, intentionally so. She folded her hands in her lap and waited. Zaylin didn't speak immediately. She picked up a teacup, took a delicate sip, then set it down with a soft click against the saucer. The silence stretched, designed to make Andrea squirm, to make her nervous, to remind her who held all the power in this room. "Your father died 14 years ago today," Zaylin finally said. Andrea's breath caught. She had forgotten. How had she forgotten? "I married Elric Ashcroft when you were 4 years old," Zaylin continued, her voice calm, almost pleasant. He was a good man. Weak, perhaps, but good. He believed in second chances, in seeing the best in people. That's why he took me in after my previous husband's death. Andrea had heard this story before, though the details always seemed to shift slightly with each telling. He loved you very much, Zaylin said, and for just a moment her expression softened. Perhaps too much. He was so focused on you, on making sure his precious daughter was taken care of, that he neglected to see what was happening in his own household. I don't understand, Andrea whispered. Of course you don't. Zaylin's smile was gentle, which somehow made it worse. You were just a child. But children grow up, Andrea, and when they do, they must face the truth about themselves. Zaylin opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a small wooden box. She set it on the desk between them, her fingers resting on the lid. I made a promise to your father before he died. I promised I would take care of you, no matter what. Do you know how difficult that promise has been to keep? Andrea's throat tightened. I've tried to be useful. Useful. Zaylin laughed, the sound soft and terrible. Yes, you've been useful. A good worker when properly motivated, but that's not what I'm talking about, child. She opened the box. Inside was a small glass vial filled with silver liquid. Do you know what this is? Andrea shook her head. This is what I've put in your tea every morning for 14 years. Silver oxide, mixed with moon thistle and wolfsbane extract. Just enough to suppress your wolf without killing you. Just enough to keep you weak. The world tilted. Andrea gripped the arms of the chair, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. You poisoned me? I saved you, Zaylin corrected, her voice sharp. Your father was planning to do something incredibly foolish before he died. Something that would have destroyed everything I worked for. I couldn't allow that. I don't understand, Andrea said again, but this time the words came out broken. You will. Zaylin closed the box and set it aside. Tonight during the lunar ascension ceremony, you will attend. Not as a servant, but as a member of this household. You will stand with Jexina and Ryder, and you will present yourself before the pack. Andrea's confusion deepened. But I'm wolfless. I can't present. You will present, Zaylin interrupted. And when you do, the entire pack will see exactly what you are. They will see a girl who tried desperately to be something she's not. A girl who, in her desperation, has done questionable things. Cold dread settled in Andrea's stomach. What are you talking about? Zaylin stood, smoothing her dress with practiced elegance. Jexina will explain the details. But understand this, Andrea. Tonight is not the beginning of something new. Tonight is the end. The final act of a very long play. She walked to the window, her back to Andrea now. You've been wondering why I kept you alive all these years, why I didn't just send you away when it became clear you were wolfless. The truth is, I needed you exactly where you were. Broken, powerless, grateful for whatever scraps I threw your way. Why? Andrea's voice cracked. What did I ever do to you? You were born. Zaylin turned, and for the first time, Andrea saw genuine emotion in her stepmother's eyes. Hatred, pure and burning. You were born to a woman who took everything from me. And I swore, the day Elvoria died, that her daughter would pay for every moment of suffering I endured. The name hit Andrea like a physical blow. Elvoria, her mother, the woman who had died giving birth to her, leaving behind only a small wooden wolf carving and stories Andrea could barely remember. Get out, Zaylin said, her voice returning to its usual cold calm. Clean yourself up. Tonight, you'll wear the gray dress, the one with all the patches. I want them to see exactly what you are. Andrea stood on shaking legs. She made it to the door before Zaylin's voice stopped her. Andrea, one more thing. She turned. Zaylin's smile was terrible. Your father's last words were about you. He begged me to protect you, to make sure you never felt worthless. I want you to remember that tonight when you realize just how completely I failed to honor that promise. Andrea fled the study, Jexina's laughter following her down the hall. She made it to the servants' quarters before the tears came. Her small corner of the room offered no privacy, just a thin mat on the floor and a wooden crate for her few belongings. She collapsed onto the mat, her body shaking with sobs she'd held back for too long. Poisoned. She'd been poisoned for 14 years. Andrea pulled her knees to her chest, trying to make herself smaller, trying to disappear. The wooden wolf her father had carved sat on the crate beside her. She picked it up with trembling hands, running her fingers over the worn wood. She didn't remember much about her father. Just fragments. his voice calling her, "Little Moon." The feeling of being safe in his arms. The way he would carve by the firelight, wood shavings falling like snow. Had he known? Had he suspected what Zaylin was? Andrea's chest ached with the weight of questions she'd never get answers to. She pressed the wooden wolf to her heart and closed her eyes, searching for any memory of her mother. But there was nothing. Just a name. Elvoria. And the knowledge that somehow Andrea's birth had cost her mother everything. "You're crying again." Andrea's eyes snapped open. Ryder stood in the doorway, his tall frame blocking most of the light from the hall. Jexina's twin was different from his sister in almost every way. Where she was cruel and sharp, he was quiet and distant. But distant wasn't the same as kind. Ryder had watched Andrea suffer for years and done nothing. "I'm fine," Andrea said, wiping her eyes quickly. "You're not fine. Mother just told you about the poison. So he'd known too." "Of course he had. Why?" Andrea's voice broke. "Why did all of you just let her do this to me?" Ryder stepped into the room, his expression unreadable. "Because Mother gets what she wants. She always has. Fighting her is pointless. So you just went along with it? Watched her poison me every morning for 14 years? I didn't know about the poison until last year," Ryder said, but there was no conviction in his words. "By then, what was I supposed to do? Tell you? Ruin Mother's plans? She would have destroyed me too. So you saved yourself instead." "Yes." At least he had the decency to look ashamed. "I saved myself. I'm not proud of it, but I won't pretend otherwise." Andrea looked at him, really looked at him. He was handsome in the way wolves were supposed to be, with his dark hair and strong features, but there was weakness in his eyes, the kind of weakness that came from always choosing the easy path, from never standing up for anything that might cost him something. "Why are you here?" she asked. Ryder pulled something from his pocket. An envelope, yellowed with age. "I found this in Father's old study. It's addressed to you. I think he hid it before he died." Andrea's heart stuttered. She took the envelope with shaking hands. Her name was written on the front in handwriting she didn't recognize but somehow felt familiar. Andrea Moonvale Shadowmere. "That's not my name," she whispered. "Maybe it is." Ryder moved toward the door. "Tonight is going to be bad, Andrea. Whatever happens, whatever Jexina and Mother have planned, just remember that you're tougher than they think. You've survived this long." He left before she could respond. Andrea stared at the envelope, her fingers tracing the name written there. Shadowmere. Why did that sound familiar? She tried to open it, but her hands were shaking too badly. Instead, she tucked it into the pocket of her dress, pressing it close to her heart. Tonight. Whatever happened tonight, she would face it. She'd survived 14 years of poison and cruelty. She could survive one more night, but as she rose to prepare for the ceremony, as she looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror and saw the hollow-eyed girl staring back, Andrea wondered if survival was really enough anymore. Chapter 2. The Ceremony of Shame. The great hall transformed as evening approached. Andrea watched from the shadows as servants hung silver and white silk from the vaulted ceiling, as they lit thousands of candles that made the space glow like something from a dream. The lunar ascension ceremony was sacred, Zaylin had told her once. A night when young wolves presented themselves to the pack, when their ranks were officially recognized, when the moon goddess herself was said to look down and bless her children. Andrea had never been allowed to attend before. Wolfless didn't participate in wolf ceremonies. They existed in the margins, invisible and irrelevant. But tonight was different. Tonight, Zaylin had decided Andrea would be seen. She stood in the servants' corridor, wearing the gray dress Zaylin had chosen for her. Every patch was visible, every worn thread on display. Andrea had scrubbed herself clean in the cold water basin, had tried to tame her dull brown hair into something presentable, but she knew it didn't matter. Next to the nobles in their ceremonial furs and silks, she would look like exactly what she was, a servant pretending to be something more. "The guests are arriving," one of the other servants whispered as she hurried past. "I heard Alpha King Roscoe Stormrider is coming. Can you imagine?" Andrea's heart skipped. The Alpha King. She'd heard stories about Roscoe Stormrider, whispered tales of his power, his cold precision, the way he'd united the warring packs under one rule. They said he'd been searching for something for years, or someone, but surely that had nothing to do with a wolfless girl hiding in the shadows. Through the doorway, Andrea could see wolves beginning to fill the hall. Alphas moved with confidence that seemed to bend space around them, their power radiating in visible waves. Betas followed in positions of honor, their wolves just beneath the surface, ready to be called. Even the Omegas wore beautiful clothes, their heads held high with the pride of belonging to something larger than themselves. Andrea pressed herself further into the shadows, watching. A foolish part of her wondered what it would feel like to walk into that hall and belong, to not feel the weight of every eye on her, judging her, finding her lacking. There you are. Jexina appeared beside her, and Andrea's brief fantasy shattered. Her stepsister looked stunning in a gown of deep emerald green that matched her eyes. Her auburn hair was arranged in an intricate style, held in place with golden pins shaped like wolves. She wore their father's signet ring on her finger. Not Andrea's father. Their father. Because Zaylin had made sure everyone forgot that Andrea had any claim to the Ashcroft name. "It's almost time," Jexina said, her voice carrying a strange note that Andrea couldn't quite identify. Not excitement, exactly. Something darker. "Mother wants you to wait here until the presentations begin. Then you'll be called forward." Jexina. Andrea found her courage somewhere deep inside. What's going to happen tonight? Her stepsister's expression flickered. For just a moment, that almost guilt appeared again. Something that should have happened years ago. Something that will finally end this. "I don't understand." "You will." Jexina touched Andrea's shoulder, the gesture so unexpected that Andrea flinched. "For what it's worth, I never wanted it to go this far. But Mother always gets what she wants." Then she was gone, swept back into the glittering crowd, leaving Andrea alone with her racing heart and growing dread. The ceremony began with traditional blessings. The pack's elder, a wolf so old his fur had turned completely white, spoke words in the ancient tongue. Andrea didn't understand the language, but she felt the power in it, the way the very air seemed to respond to his voice. Then came the presentations. Young wolves stepped forward one by one, kneeling in the center of the hall, while their wolves were assessed, their ranks announced. Cheers erupted for strong alphas, respectful applause for solid betas, gentle encouragement for omegas who would support the pack in essential ways. Jexina presented herself with fluid grace. Jexina Ashcroft, daughter of Zaylin Ashcroft, bearer of a strong beta bloodline. The elder's eyes glowed briefly as he assessed her wolf. Beta, with the strength to lead. "Welcome to your rank, Jexina Ashcroft." The hall erupted in applause. Zaylin stood in the place of honor, her face glowing with pride. Ryder presented next, his voice steady. "Ryder Ashcroft, son of Zaylin Ashcroft, bearer of alpha blood. More assessment. Beta, strong and capable. Welcome to your rank, Ryder Ashcroft." More applause, though Andrea noticed Zaylin's smile tighten slightly. She'd wanted Ryder to be alpha. Another disappointment for a woman who seemed to collect them. Then, as the applause faded, Zaylin's voice rang out clear and cold. "Your Majesty, honored pack, there is one more who should present herself tonight." The hall fell silent. Andrea's blood turned to ice. "My stepdaughter Andrea has reached the age of presentation. Despite her condition, it is only right that she be formally acknowledged before the pack." Andrea couldn't move. This wasn't supposed to happen. Wolfless didn't present. It was humiliation to even try. "Andrea," Zaylin called, her voice carrying false warmth. "Come forward, dear." Andrea's legs moved before her mind could catch up. She walked through the crowd on shaking limbs, feeling every eye on her, hearing the whispers that followed her like ghosts. "Is that the wolfless one? Poor thing. This is cruel. Why would Zaylin do this to her own stepdaughter?" Andrea reached the presentation circle and knelt. The marble was cold beneath her knees. She kept her eyes down, couldn't bring herself to look at the faces surrounding her. "Andrea," the elder said, his voice gentle with pity. "You understand what this means? To present without a wolf?" "I understand," she whispered. But before the elder could continue, before the ceremony could move forward, Zaylin stepped into the circle. "Your Majesty, honored wolves, before we proceed, there is something the pack should know, something I have kept silent about for too long, out of love for my late husband and compassion for his daughter." Andrea's stomach dropped. This was it. Whatever Zaylin had been planning, Andrea has been in our care since her father's tragic death 14 years ago. Zaylin continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "We have given her a home, food, shelter. We have treated her as family, despite her, at our limitations." The words landed like slaps. Despite limitations. As if Andrea's very existence was something to be tolerated. "But recently I discovered something that has broken my heart." Zaylin's voice cracked with manufactured emotion. My stepdaughter has been attempting to seduce my son. My rider. The hall exploded with gasps and angry mutters. Andrea's head snapped up. That's not true. But Zaylin was already moving, already producing a letter from her gown. I found this in Ryder's chambers. A letter from Andrea, detailing her feelings for him, her desperate plans to secure a mate before the fading claims her. She handed the letter to the elder, who read it with a deepening frown. Andrea's mind raced. She'd never written such a letter. She'd barely spoken to Ryder in years. The handwriting has been verified, Zaylin said softly. I'm sorry, Andrea. I know you must have been frightened, facing the fading, but this was wrong. I didn't write that. Andrea's voice broke. I wouldn't. But Jaxina was stepping forward now, tears streaming down her face in a performance that would have been impressive if it wasn't destroying Andrea's life. I'm so sorry, Jaxina sobbed. I wanted to protect her. She's my stepsister. But Ryder told me he felt unsafe. She's been following him, watching him. We found her things in his room. Stop. Andrea tried to stand, but hands grabbed her shoulders, forcing her back to her knees. This is a lie. All of it. Zaylin produced another item. A necklace, ornate and beautiful. The Ashcroft family seal prominent on the pendant. We found this hidden in Andrea's quarters. My grandmother's necklace, stolen. She's been taking things from our family for months, trying to piece together some kind of legitimacy for herself. The crowd's murmurs turned angry. Theft, seduction, a wolfless girl trying to trap a noble wolf through deception. Andrea knelt there, her world crumbling around her, and finally understood. This wasn't about humiliation. This was about destruction, complete and total. Zaylin was going to make sure that when Andrea died from the fading in 4 days, no one would mourn her. No one would question it. She would be remembered as the desperate, thieving, wolfless girl who got what she deserved. Your Majesty? Zaylin turned to address someone Andrea hadn't noticed until now. I apologize that you had to witness this, but justice must be served. Andrea forced herself to look up, to see who Zaylin was addressing, and her breath stopped. He stood on the dais at the far end of the hall, and Andrea couldn't understand how she'd missed him before. He was massive, easily 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed to block out the light behind him. His hair was midnight black, his eyes a silver that seemed to glow in the candlelight. Power radiated from him in waves so strong Andrea could feel them even from across the hall. Alpha King Roscoe Stormrider, and he was staring directly at her. Their eyes met, and something inside Andrea's chest cracked. Not painfully, but like ice breaking under spring sun. Heat flooded her veins, sudden and intense. The coldness that had been settling into her bones for weeks vanished in an instant. Roscoe's expression shifted. His eyes widened slightly, his massive frame going completely still. His nostrils flared, as if he was scenting something. Andrea couldn't look away. She didn't understand what was happening. The heat in her veins was spreading, building, becoming almost unbearable. Her skin felt too tight, like something was trying to burst free from inside her. Andrea, the elder was saying, his voice seeming to come from very far away. The accusations against you are serious. How do you plead? She should answer, should defend herself, should say something, anything, to stop this nightmare from continuing. But all she could do was stare at the Alpha King, at the way his silver eyes had turned molten gold, at the way his hands were gripping the arms of his chair hard enough to make the wood creak. The heat in Andrea's veins became fire. She gasped, doubling over as pain and something else, something primal and ancient, surged through her. What's happening to her? Someone in the crowd asked. The scent hit then. It rolled off Andrea's skin in visible waves, shimmering in the candlelight like heat rising from summer stone. The smell was indescribable, impossible. Moonlight distilled into fragrance, wild jasmine and midnight rain, ancient power and divine sweetness all combined into something that made every wolf in the hall freeze. It was the scent of a Luna. Not just any Luna, a true Luna, blessed by the moon goddess herself, marked by divine power that hadn't been seen in generations. The Omegas were the first to fall to their knees, their bodies responding to an instinct older than thought. Then the Betas, their wolves forcing submission they couldn't fight. Even the Alphas felt it, their proud spines bending slightly against their will. Zaylin's face had gone white. No, this is impossible. Jaxina stumbled backward, her performance forgotten. What is she? But Andrea wasn't aware of any of them. The fire in her veins had reached a crescendo, and with it came something she'd been missing her entire life. Her wolf, not emerging gently, not awakening with grace. This was violent, explosive, 18 years of suppressed nature fighting free all at once. She threw her head back and screamed. The sound that came out wasn't entirely human. It was rage and pain and triumph all combined, echoing off the vaulted ceiling with enough force to make the chandeliers sway. And across the hall, Alpha King Roscoe Stormrider moved. He didn't walk. He launched himself from the dais with supernatural speed, his massive frame covering the distance in seconds. His eyes had gone completely gold now, his wolf so close to the surface that his form seemed to flicker between human and beast. He reached Andrea just as she collapsed from the force of her awakening. His arms caught her before she hit the marble, pulling her against his chest with a possessiveness that made his Beta Xavian take an instinctive step forward. Roscoe's voice, when he spoke, was barely human. A growl that carried words, a command that made every wolf in the hall bow their heads in submission. Mine. She is mine. The mate bond snapped into place with a force that Andrea felt even through her pain. A golden thread connecting her to him, ancient and undeniable, marked by the moon goddess herself as proof of their fated connection. Roscoe turned to face the shocked pack, Andrea unconscious in his arms, and his voice carried absolute authority. This woman is my fated mate. Anyone who has harmed her, anyone who has lied about her, anyone who has stood by and allowed her suffering, will answer to me. His eyes found Zaylin, and his smile was terrible. And that answer will not be pleasant. Chapter 3. Truth in Silk and Moonlight. Andrea woke to softness. That was the first shock. Not pain, not cold marble, not the thin mat in the servants' quarters. Softness, silk sheets against her skin, a mattress that seemed to cradle her body like gentle hands, warmth from a fireplace that crackled somewhere nearby. For a moment, she thought she was dead. Maybe the fading had finally claimed her. Maybe this was whatever came after. Then she heard breathing. Andrea's eyes snapped open. The room was magnificent, all vaulted ceilings and elegant furniture, lit by both firelight and dozens of candles. But she barely noticed any of that, because sitting in a chair beside her bed, watching her with intense silver eyes, was Alpha King Roscoe Stormrider. She scrambled backward instinctively, the sheets tangling around her legs. Her back hit the headboard and she froze, her heart racing. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "Whatever I did wrong, whatever rules I broke, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "Andrea," his voice was gentle, so different from the commanding growl in the great hall. "You have nothing to apologize for." The kindness in his tone broke something inside her. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. 18 years of held-back emotion finally finding release. "I don't understand what happened," she sobbed. "I don't understand any of this. I'm supposed to be dying. I'm supposed to be nothing." Roscoe moved from the chair to the edge of her bed, his movements careful, as if approaching something precious and breakable. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and when she didn't, he took her hand in his. His touch sent sparks through her skin. The mate bond, she realized. This was what the bond felt like when it was real, when it was fated, when the moon goddess herself had chosen two souls to complete each other. "Tell me," Roscoe said softly. "Tell me everything they did to you." And Andrea did. The words poured out between sobs, years of suffering finally given voice. She told him about the silver tea, about Jexina's cruelty, about being treated as a servant in her own father's house. She told him about the fading, about the coldness in her bones, about lying awake at night wondering if she would simply stop breathing before morning came. She told him about believing, truly believing, that she deserved it all. Roscoe listened in silence, his hand never leaving hers. But Andrea could feel his rage through the bond, could sense his wolf snarling inside him, demanding blood, demanding justice for every hurt she'd suffered. When she finally finished, her voice hoarse from crying, Roscoe spoke. "My pack healer, Sornix Hawkwell, examined you while you were unconscious. Do you know what he found?" Andrea shook her head. "Your blood is saturated with silver oxide, a substance specifically designed to suppress wolf awakening. Someone has been poisoning you, Andrea. Deliberately and systematically, for years." The confirmation of what Zaylin had told her made Andrea's stomach turn. "She told me, Zaylin, this morning. She said she'd been putting it in my tea." Roscoe's eyes flashed gold for just a moment. "She confessed? She said she saved me, that my father was going to do something foolish, and she needed to stop it." Andrea's voice dropped to a whisper. She said I was born to a woman who took everything from her, that my mother's name was Elvoria. Something shifted in Roscoe's expression. Elvoria Wolfheart? Andrea's breath caught. You knew her? I knew of her. She was moon goddess blessed, one of the most powerful Lunas in generations. She died giving birth to her daughter. His eyes searched Andrea's face. To you. I don't understand. If my mother was powerful, why am I— You're not weak, Andrea. You never were. Your wolf was suppressed, caged by silver and poison, but she was always there, waiting. His thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. What you felt in the hall, that explosion of power, that was 18 years of suppressed nature breaking free all at once. Your wolf is incredibly strong. Andrea wanted to believe him, but 18 years of conditioning whispered that this was too good to be true, that she would wake up and find it was all a dream, that she was still the worthless, wolfless girl everyone had always told her she was. The letter, she said suddenly, remembering. Before the ceremony, Ryder gave me a letter addressed to Andrea Moonvale Shadowmere. Is that my real name? Roscoe's expression grew serious. I don't know, but I intend to find out. Andrea, do you trust me? It was a strange question. She'd known him for less than a day. By all logic, she should be terrified of the Alpha King, should be careful and guarded and smart. But the mate bond hummed between them, warm and steady, and when Andrea looked into his silver eyes, she saw something she'd never seen directed at her before. Care, genuine, protective care. Yes, she whispered. I trust you. Then let me help you. Let me find the truth of who you are, where you came from, what was stolen from you. His hand tightened on hers. And let me make sure the people who hurt you face justice. Andrea nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Roscoe reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. The envelope Ryder had given her, that she'd hidden in her dress pocket. This was found when we changed your clothes. May I? Andrea nodded again. He opened the envelope carefully and pulled out a single sheet of paper, yellowed with age. His expression shifted as he read, something like shock crossing his features. What is it? Andrea asked. Roscoe handed her the letter silently. The handwriting was elegant but hurried, as if written in desperate haste. Andrea's eyes scanned the words, her heart pounding harder with each line. My dearest Andrea Moonvale, if you are reading this, I fear my suspicions have proven correct. Zaylin is not who she claims to be. I have discovered evidence that she married me to gain access to the Shadowmere territories through you. You are not just my daughter. You are the last of the Shadowmere royal line, heir to the western territories that have been held in trust since your mother's death. Your mother, Elvoria Wolfheart, was my fated mate and the most powerful Luna of our generation. You carry her blessing, her strength, her divine connection to the moon goddess. Zaylin knows this. That is why she targeted us. I am changing my will tonight, ensuring you are protected, that guardianship passes to the royal court rather than to Zaylin. But if something happens to me before I can complete this, remember, you are never nothing. You are moonlight itself. You are royal blood and divine blessing combined. Trust no one except the Alpha King. By ancient law, he alone can protect the royal bloodlines. Find him. Tell him what happened. He will know what to do. Your loving father, Elric Shadowmere, Alpha Supreme of the Western Territories. Andrea read the letter 3 times, her hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. When she finally looked up at Roscoe, she saw her own shock reflected in his eyes. I'm not Andrea Ashcroft. No, Roscoe said quietly. You're Andrea Moonvale Shadowmere, daughter of Alpha Supreme Elric Shadowmere and Luna Elvoria Wolfheart, heir to the Western Territories. Royal bloodline. The room spun. Andrea gripped the letter, the only solid thing in a world that had just turned completely upside down. I don't understand. If I'm really who this letter says, why did no one come for me? Why did everyone just let Zaylin? Because according to official records, you died 18 years ago. The new voice made Andrea jump. A man stood in the doorway, tall and lean with dark hair and sharp features. He carried himself with the confidence of a beta, someone used to standing at an alpha's right hand. This is Xavian Nightfall, my second, Roscoe explained. He's been investigating since last night. Xavian stepped into the room, carrying a leather folder. Your Majesty, we have a problem, a significant one. He opened the folder and spread documents across the bed. Official papers, stamped with royal seals, recording births and deaths and property transfers. This is Andrea Moonvale Shadowmere's death certificate. Xavian said, pointing to one document, signed by Court Advisor Daxton Ironwood and witnessed by Zaylin Ashcroft. Cause of death: rogue attack during a hunting accident. The same attack that supposedly killed your father. Andrea stared at the certificate. Her name, her age, the date of her death, recorded in official ink. But I'm not dead. No, Xavian agreed. You're very much alive. Which means someone committed fraud at the highest level. Someone falsified royal death certificates, which is a crime punishable by execution. There's more, Roscoe said quietly. Show her. Xavian produced another document. This is the property transfer for the Shadowmere territories. With you legally dead, the lands should have reverted to the royal trust. Instead, they were transferred to the Ashcroft family, with Zaylin named as executor due to her marriage to your father. She's been collecting revenue from my territories for 18 years, Andrea whispered. Not just revenue. The Shadowmere lands are some of the most valuable in the kingdom. Mineral rights, timber, water access. We're talking about millions in annual income. Xavian's expression was grim. Zaylin hasn't just been living off your inheritance. She's been getting rich from it. Andrea's mind reeled. Every beautiful gown Jexina wore, every expensive piece of furniture in the Ashcroft Manor, every lavish party and prestigious event, all of it paid for with money that should have been hers. But why keep me alive? She asked. If she'd already legally killed me, why not just finish it? Roscoe and Xavian exchanged glances. We're still trying to answer that question, Roscoe said carefully. But I have a theory. Andrea, has anyone ever mentioned you having siblings? Or your father having other children? No, Zaylin said. I was an only child. That my mother died giving birth to me. That part is true, Xavian said. But your father remarried before he met Zaylin. His second wife had a daughter from a previous marriage. Ice formed in Andrea's chest. Jexina, no. Xavian's voice was gentle. Jexina and Ryder aren't Zaylin's biological children. She adopted them after their father died. Another wealthy widower, another mysterious accident, another fortune absorbed. The revelation hit Andrea like a physical blow. Jexina wasn't even really her stepsister. They shared no blood at all. It had all been an elaborate performance. So why keep me alive? Andrea repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Roscoe's hand found hers again. Because dead women can't give consent, but living women, powerless, wolfless women who believe they're nothing, can be manipulated into signing papers, making claims, validating property transfers. Zaylin kept you alive as a legal tool, a signature to be used when needed. And once I turned 19 and the fating took me, Andrea's voice shook. It would be natural, expected, no questions asked. Exactly. Andrea looked down at the documents spread across the bed. Her life, or rather, the death of her life, all recorded in official ink. Her father's warning, too late to save him, but maybe just in time to save her. I want to remember, she said suddenly. My father, my mother, being Andrea Shadowmere instead of Andrea Nothing. I want to remember who I was before she took it all away. Your wolf can help with that, Roscoe said. Suppressed memories often return after awakening. But Andrea, you need to be prepared. If you remember what Zaylin did, I already know what she did. She poisoned me for 18 years. She stole my inheritance. She made me believe I was worthless. Andrea's voice grew stronger. Whatever memories come back can't be worse than what I already know. Actually, Xavian said quietly, they might be. Andrea looked at him sharply. What do you mean? We found evidence that your father died of nightshade poisoning. Small doses, administered over weeks to make it look like natural decline. The same method Zaylin used on her previous husbands. The room went silent except for the crackling fire. She murdered him, Andrea whispered. She murdered my father right in front of me. If you witnessed it, your wolf would have suppressed the memory to protect you, Roscoe explained. Trauma like that in a young child, especially one whose wolf is already being poisoned. I want to remember anyway. Roscoe studied her face. Are you sure? Andrea thought about her father's letter, about the warmth in his words, the love that radiated from every line. She thought about 18 years of believing she had no one, nothing, no one who had ever truly cared about her. I'm sure, she said. If he loved me enough to try to protect me, I owe him the truth, even if it hurts. Then I'll be here, Roscoe promised. Whatever you remember, whatever comes back, I'll be right here. Andrea closed her eyes and reached for her wolf. The presence was still new, still strange, but it felt like coming home. Her wolf stirred, and with it came a flood of memories that had been locked away for 14 years. She saw her father's face, really saw it for the first time since she was 4 years old. He was laughing, carved wood shavings falling like snow. He was calling her Little Moon and lifting her into his arms. He was showing her the Shadowmere seal, the pendant that she now realized Jaxina had been wearing. "This means you're precious," his voice echoed in her memory. "Never forget who you are, Andrea. Never forget that you're loved." Then the memories turned dark. Andrea heard herself gasp, felt Roscoe's hand tighten on hers, but she couldn't stop the flood now. She was 4 years old again, hiding behind the curtains in her father's study. Zaylin was there, pouring tea with her usual cold grace. "Drink, husband. You've been working so hard." And her father drank. He trusted her. Why wouldn't he? She was his wife. But then his face changed. Confusion, fear. His hands went to his throat. "Zaylin, something's wrong." "Shh." Zaylin's voice was gentle, almost loving. "It will be over soon. You should have left well enough alone, Elric. Should have let me handle things my way." "Andrea," her father gasped. "My daughter will be taken care of. I promise." Zaylin smiled. "She'll never know what happened here. She'll never remember being anything more than the wolfless girl I make her." 4-year-old Andrea watched her father die, watched the light leave his eyes, watched Zaylin check his pulse with clinical detachment before finally looking up and seeing small Andrea peeking through the curtains. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Zaylin smiled. "Come here, sweet girl. We need to talk about what you saw." Adult Andrea jerked back to the present, her face wet with tears she didn't remember shedding. Roscoe's arms were around her, solid and warm, keeping her grounded as her world shattered and reformed. "I watched her kill him." Andrea sobbed into Roscoe's chest. "I watched her and I couldn't do anything. I was 4 years old and I couldn't." "You survived," Roscoe said fiercely. "That's what you did. You survived her, Andrea. You're still here. You're still fighting." Andrea cried until she had no tears left, until the memories settled into something she could carry instead of something that threatened to destroy her. When she finally pulled back, Roscoe's shirt was soaked, but he didn't seem to care. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't apologize for grief. Don't apologize for pain. You've earned the right to both." Andrea looked at the documents still spread across the bed, at the death certificate with her name, at her father's letter with its desperate warning. "What happens now?" "Now," Roscoe said, his voice hard as stone, "we bring justice. For your father. For you. For every moment Zaylin stole." He stood, helping Andrea to her feet. She was wearing a silk nightgown, she realized. Someone had changed her clothes, had treated her with care she didn't know existed. "Can you stand?" Roscoe asked. Andrea tested her legs. They were shaky but strong enough. "Yes. Good. Because I want you to see something." He led her to the window, Xavian following silently behind. They overlooked a courtyard lit by torches, and there, surrounded by guards, was Zaylin. She was still beautiful, still composed, but Andrea could see cracks in her mask. Fear, perhaps, or maybe just rage at being caught. "She's being held until her trial," Roscoe explained. "By ancient pack law, crimes against a Luna Supreme are judged by the Alpha King himself." "Luna Supreme? That's your rightful title, Andrea. Daughter of an Alpha Supreme, mate to the Alpha King, the highest rank a female wolf can hold." Andrea stared at the woman who had destroyed her life, who had murdered her father, who had spent 18 years trying to erase her existence. She waited to feel satisfaction, or maybe vengeance. Instead, she just felt tired. "I don't want to be like her," Andrea said softly. "I don't want revenge to turn me into something cold." Roscoe's arm came around her shoulders. "That's the difference between you and her, Andrea. You've suffered more than most wolves endure in a lifetime, and you're still capable of compassion. That's not weakness. That's strength she could never understand." Andrea leaned into his warmth, letting the mate bond steady her. Tomorrow would bring trials and justice and painful truths. But right now, for the first time in 18 years, she was safe. She was seen. She was believed. And somewhere deep inside, where the worthless, wolfless girl used to live, Andrea Moonvale Shadowmere began to believe she might actually be enough. Chapter 4. Memories and Conspiracy. Andrea stood in the war room, surrounded by documents that detailed her stolen life. 3 days had passed since the ceremony. 3 days of investigation and revelation, and slowly learning how to exist as something other than a servant. The dress she wore now was simple but elegant, deep blue silk that Roscoe had insisted she accept. Looking at her reflection this morning, Andrea had barely recognized herself. Her dull brown hair now shimmered with auburn undertones. Her thin frame was filling out with proper nutrition. Her face no longer carried the hollow look of prolonged suffering. Her wolf's emergence had begun healing years of neglect, both physical and emotional. But the internal healing was slower. "These are the financial records from the Shadowmere estate," Xavian said, spreading more papers across the massive oak table. "For the past 18 years, Zaylin has been collecting approximately 200,000 gold pieces annually. None of it went into trust for you. None of it maintained your family's properties." Andrea's fingers traced the neat columns of numbers. Each line represented something stolen. Opportunities, security, the childhood she should have had. "Where did the money go?" she asked. "Everywhere. Ashcroft Manor renovations, Jexina and Ryder's wardrobes and education, bribes to keep certain officials quiet." Xavian pulled out another document. "And this? Monthly payments to court advisor Daxton Ironwood. 50,000 gold pieces a year, paid like clockwork." Roscoe leaned against the table, his arms crossed. He'd been carefully controlled around Andrea, giving her space while staying close enough to provide comfort. The mate bond hummed between them constantly, warm and reassuring, but he hadn't pushed for anything more than hand-holding and the occasional embrace when her memories became too heavy. Andrea was grateful for his patience. She was attracted to him, powerfully so, but 18 years of conditioning didn't vanish in 3 days. The idea that someone like Roscoe could want her, could choose her, still felt impossible. Daxton signed off on everything. Roscoe said, his voice hard. "Your death certificate, the property transfers, every falsified document needed to erase Andrea Shadowmere from existence. He'll stand trial," Xavian added, "but he's already started talking, trying to negotiate a lighter sentence by providing evidence." "What kind of evidence?" Andrea asked. The two men exchanged glances. Whatever they were about to tell her, it wasn't good. "Daxton claims Zaylin has done this before," Roscoe said carefully. "Multiple times." Andrea's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Xavian produced a leather-bound journal. "We found this in Daxton's personal safe. It details every transaction he made with Zaylin over the past 20 years. Andrea, she's been marrying wealthy widowers, murdering them, and absorbing their fortunes since before you were born." He opened the journal to a marked page. Her first husband, Marcus Ravenholt, died of sudden illness 3 months after their wedding. No children, no other family. Zaylin inherited everything. Another page. Second husband, Theodore Frostbane, died in a hunting accident after 2 years of marriage. He had a daughter from his first marriage, named Jexina. She was 6 years old when her father died. Andrea's breath caught. Jexina watched her father die? We don't know if she witnessed it. But yes, Zaylin took custody and legally adopted her. Xavian's expression was grim. Third husband, Victor Knightwood, another hunting accident. He had a son named Ryder, also 6 years old. Zaylin adopted him too. She collected orphans, Andrea whispered. Children who had no one else, who would be grateful for any crumb of affection, and who could be molded, Roscoe added. Ryder and Jexina grew up believing Zaylin saved them, that their births' parents' deaths were tragic accidents. They had no reason to question her. Until my father. Until your father, Roscoe agreed. Elric Shadowmere was different. He had you, a legitimate heir. He had status, land, power, and most importantly, he had your mother's legacy. Xavian pulled out a faded photograph. "This is Elvoria Wolfheart Shadowmere." Andrea's hands shook as she took the picture. Her mother was beautiful, with long auburn hair and eyes that seemed to glow even in the old photograph. She was laughing at something outside the frame, her face filled with joy. "She looks like you," Roscoe said softly. "The resemblance is striking." Andrea traced her mother's face with one finger. This woman had died bringing her into the world, had loved her father enough to bear a child despite the risks, had passed down divine blessing and power that Zaylin spent 18 years trying to destroy. "Your mother was moon goddess blessed," Xavian explained. "It's extremely rare, occurring maybe once or twice a generation. Blessed Lunas have powers normal wolves don't. Healing, prophecy, the ability to commune directly with the goddess." "Did my father know?" Andrea asked. "When he married her, they were fated mates," Roscoe said. "Like us. The bond drew them together. But yes, he knew what she was. Everyone knew. Elvoria's blessing was public knowledge, which is why Zaylin targeted him, Andrea said, the pieces finally clicking together. She didn't just want his wealth. She wanted access to me, to whatever I might inherit from my mother. Exactly. Zavian closed the journal. But she couldn't just kill you. If the daughter of a blessed Luna died mysteriously, questions would be asked. Investigations would happen. So she did something worse. She made me nobody, Andrea finished quietly. Legally dead but physically alive. Suppressed to the point where no one would ever suspect I carried divine blessing. The room fell silent except for the crackling fire. Andrea set down her mother's photograph and walked to the window. Outside, the royal grounds stretched in manicured perfection. So different from the servant's view she'd known all her life. I want to remember more, she said suddenly. Not just my father's death. Everything. My mother. My early childhood. What it felt like before the poison. Andrea. Roscoe moved to stand beside her. More memories might mean more pain. I know. But I'm tired of having holes in my past. Tired of Zaylin controlling even my memories. She turned to face him. Can you help me? Roscoe studied her face, and Andrea saw the internal battle he was fighting, the Alpha King who wanted to protect her from further hurt, the mate who would do anything, she asked. Yes, he finally said. But I want Sornix here. Your wolf is still healing from years of suppression. Forcing memories too quickly could damage you. Within an hour, they'd moved to Roscoe's private chambers. Sornix Hawkwell, the pack's master healer, had set up a comfortable space with pillows and blankets. He was older than the others, with silver threading through his dark hair, and his eyes held the wisdom of someone who'd seen too much suffering. Memory recovery can be unpredictable, Sornix explained as Andrea settled onto the couch. Your wolf suppressed certain things to protect you. When we bring them back, the emotions will be fresh, raw. It may feel like you're living through them again. I understand, Andrea said, though her hands were shaking. Roscoe sat beside her, taking her hand. I'll be right here. If it becomes too much, just squeeze my hand. We'll stop immediately. Andrea nodded. Sornix placed his hands on either side of her head, his wolf's healing energy flowing warm through his palms. Close your eyes, he instructed gently. Reach for your wolf. Ask her to show you what she's been protecting. Andrea obeyed. Her wolf stirred, no longer frightened but still cautious. Slowly, carefully, memories began to surface. She was 2 years old, sitting in her mother's lap. Elvoria was singing something in the ancient tongue, her voice like honey and moonlight combined. Andrea didn't understand the words, but she felt safe, loved, precious. Little moon, her mother whispered, pressing a kiss to Andrea's hair. You are going to be so strong, so brave. The goddess has marked you, just as she marked me. The memory shifted. Andrea was 3 now, watching her father carve. Wood shavings fell like snow, and he was making something special. This is for you, Elric said, holding up a small wooden wolf. When you feel scared, when you feel alone, hold this and remember. You are pack. You are family. You are never truly alone. Another shift. Andrea was 4 years old, the day before everything changed. Her father was teaching her to recognize the Shadowmere territories on a map. All of this will be yours someday, little moon. These lands, these people, this legacy. Your mother would be so proud of the Luna you'll become. But mother isn't here, 4-year-old Andrea said sadly. She's always here. Elric touched Andrea's chest, right over her heart. Her blessing lives in you. Her love lives in you. That can never be taken away. But Zaylin had tried. For 18 years, she'd tried to take away everything Elric had promised could never be stolen. The memories came faster now, less controlled. Andrea saw fragments of happiness before the poisoning began. Birthday celebrations, learning to read, playing in gardens she'd later be forced to weed as a servant. Her father's pride, his love, his desperate attempts to protect her when he finally realized what Zaylin was. Then the dark memories. Watching him die, Zaylin's smile, the first dose of silver tea burning down her throat. The years that followed, each one stealing more of who she'd been meant to be. Andrea came back to the present, gasping, tears streaming down her face. Roscoe's arms came around her immediately, pulling her against his chest. I've got you, he murmured. You're safe. You're here. He tried so hard, Andrea sobbed. My father. He knew something was wrong. He was changing his will, arranging protection, but he ran out of time. He did everything he could, Sornik said gently. And he left you the letter, the warning that saved your life. Andrea clung to Roscoe, letting herself break down completely. She mourned the father she'd forgotten, the mother she never knew, the childhood that had been stolen before she was old enough to fight back. But somewhere in the grief, something else emerged. Anger. Not the cold, calculated hatred that drove Zaylin. Something hotter, cleaner. The righteous fury of someone who had suffered unjustly and refused to suffer silently anymore. When Andrea finally pulled back, her eyes were red but her voice was steady. I want to face her, she said. Zaylin, I want to look her in the eye and tell her she failed. The trial is tomorrow, Xavian said from where he'd been standing guard at the door. All the evidence has been compiled. Daxton's testimony, the financial records, your father's letter, the falsified death certificates, and the poison, Sorenix added. I can testify about the silver oxide in your system, the systematic suppression of your wolf. That alone carries a death sentence. Andrea nodded slowly. Tomorrow she would face the woman who destroyed her life. But tonight, tell me about my mother, she said suddenly, looking at Roscoe. You said you knew of her. What was she like? Roscoe settled more comfortably on the couch, pulling Andrea close so she could rest against him. I only met Elvoria once. I was young, maybe 12 years old. My father brought me to a gathering of pack leaders. She was there with your father. And? She was magnificent. Power radiated from her like light, but it wasn't cold or distant. She made everyone feel seen, important. There was a young Omega being bullied by older wolves, and Elvoria intervened. She spoke to those wolves with such quiet authority that they apologized immediately. Roscoe's hand stroked Andrea's hair gently. Then she spent the rest of the evening talking to that Omega, making sure she felt valued. Your mother had all that power, all that divine blessing, and she used it to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Andrea closed her eyes, imagining it. I want to be like her. You already are, Roscoe said. You've been suppressed, diminished, told you were nothing for 18 years, and you're still kind, still capable of compassion, still strong enough to demand justice instead of revenge. Is there a difference? Yes, revenge is about destroying your enemy. Justice is about restoring balance. His arms tightened around her. Zaylin deserves to face consequences for what she's done, but you don't need to become cruel to ensure that happens. Andrea thought about that as exhaustion finally began to pull her towards sleep. Tomorrow would bring the trial, would bring facing Zaylin, would bring justice or something close to it. But tonight, for the first time in her life, Andrea fell asleep in the arms of someone who loved her. Someone who saw her not as a burden or a servant or a problem to be solved, but as someone precious. She fell asleep as Andrea Moonveil Shadowmere, and when she woke, she would face her past with the strength of both her parents behind her. Chapter 5. The Trial of Blood. The Great Hall had been transformed into a courtroom. Where celebration had occurred days ago, judgment would now take place. The space was packed with wolves from across the kingdom, all come to witness what was already being called the trial of the century. An Alpha King presiding over charges of royal murder, fraud, and conspiracy. A lost Luna returned from the dead. Justice served or destroyed depending on the outcome. Andrea stood in the preparation chamber, staring at her reflection. She wore ceremonial white, the color of purity and truth, a Luna's trial gown that fit her perfectly. Her hair had been styled in an intricate braid, woven with silver threads that caught the light. The Shadowmere seal hung around her neck, recovered from Zaylin's personal belongings. Her mother's necklace, finally returned to its rightful owner. You look like a queen, Roscoe said from the doorway. Andrea turned. He wore black ceremonial robes, the silver crown of the Alpha King resting on his head. He looked every inch the powerful ruler he was, all authority and contained power. But when their eyes met, she saw the man beneath the crown, the mate who'd held her through nightmares, the wolf who'd chosen her above all others. I'm scared, she admitted. I know. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. But remember, you're not alone anymore. I'm with you. Xavian is with you. The truth is with you. What if it's not enough? It will be. Roscoe pressed a kiss to her forehead. Zaylin built her empire on lies. One truth after another, we've torn it down. Today we finish it. A knock at the door. Xavian entered, his expression grim. It's time, The hall is ready. Zaylin has been brought in. Andrea's stomach clenched, but she nodded. Then let's go. The walk to the great hall felt endless. Andrea focused on breathing, on putting one foot in front of the other, on the solid warmth of Roscoe's hand in hers. They stopped at the entrance, and she could hear the murmur of hundreds of wolves beyond the doors. Once we enter, I can't show favoritism, Roscoe said quietly. I have to be the Alpha King, impartial and just. But know that regardless of what face I show the court, my wolf is with you, always. I understand. The doors opened. The great hall fell silent as they entered. Roscoe took his position on the dais, the Alpha King on his throne of judgment. Andrea was escorted to a seat of honor beside the throne, the Luna's place, elevated above the crowd but below the king, a symbol of her rank, her importance, her truth. And across from her, flanked by guards and bound in silver chains, stood Zaylin Ashcroft. Andrea had expected to see fear, remorse, something human in the woman who'd destroyed so many lives. Instead, Zaylin looked furious. Her beautiful face was twisted with rage barely contained, her blue eyes burning with hatred that 18 years of pretense could no longer hide. Their eyes met, and Zaylin smiled. It was not a kind smile. Roscoe's voice rang out, carrying to every corner of the hall. We are gathered to hear evidence and pass judgment on serious charges. Zaylin Ashcroft stands accused of multiple counts of murder, conspiracy, fraud, and crimes against a royal bloodline. How does the accused plead? Not guilty. Zaylin's voice was steady, confident. Every accusation against me is based on the delusions of a wolfless girl who's manipulated the Alpha King with dark magic. Gasps from the crowd. Roscoe's expression didn't change, but Andrea felt his rage through the bond. The defendant will refrain from speculation and address the evidence only, Roscoe said coldly. Court advisor Daxton Ironwood. Step forward. Daxton emerged from the crowd, his hands shaking. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. When he reached the center of the hall, he couldn't meet anyone's eyes. State your involvement with the accused, Roscoe commanded. I falsified documents for Zaylin Ashcroft over a period of 18 years. Daxton's voice cracked. Death certificates, property transfers, financial records. She paid me 50,000 gold pieces annually to facilitate her plans. What plans specifically? The erasure of Andrea Moonvale Shadowmere from legal existence. The transfer of the Shadowmere estate to Zaylin's control. The covering up of Alpha Supreme Elric's murder. More gasps. Zaylin's smile never wavered. Why did you agree to this? Roscoe asked. For the money. At first. But then. Daxton finally looked up, his eyes haunted. Then she had too much on me. I was complicit. If I talked, I'd hang alongside her. So I stayed silent and took her gold and told myself it was the only choice. Coward, someone in the crowd muttered. Roscoe gestured for Daxton to step aside. Master Healer Sorenix Hawkwell, present your findings. Sorenix moved to the center with calm authority. I examined Luna Andrea 3 days ago. Immediately after her wolf awakening, her blood showed concentrations of silver oxide, moon thistle extract, and wolfsbane. These substances, combined, create a compound specifically designed to suppress wolf emergence. He produced a vial of silver liquid. This is identical to the tea Luna Andrea was forced to drink daily for 18 years. Daily administration of this compound would prevent any wolf from emerging, would cause symptoms consistent with being wolfless, and would eventually result in the fading at age 19. Could this suppression happen accidentally? Roscoe asked. No, Your Majesty. This compound requires specific knowledge of wolf physiology and deliberate mixing of dangerous substances. This was intentional poisoning, carefully calculated to achieve a specific result. Zaylin's smile finally cracked. That proves nothing. Andrea could have been taking that tea voluntarily, for all you know. A 4-year-old child, Roscoe's voice was ice, volunteered to be poisoned daily for 18 years? I'm simply saying the healer's testimony doesn't prove I administered anything. Then let's move to evidence that does. Roscoe gestured, and Xavian stepped forward with the leather journal. This was found in court advisor Daxton's possession. It details every transaction between himself and the accused. Would you like me to read the entries aloud? For the first time, genuine fear flashed across Zaylin's face. Xavian opened to a marked page. Entry dated 3 weeks after Alpha Supreme Elric's death. Received 50,000 gold pieces from Z. A. For processing death certificates and property transfers. Subject A. M. S. To be maintained in household under cover of stepdaughter. Annual suppressant cost estimated at 2,000 gold pieces. Project timeline. 15 years until natural fading death removes complications. The hall erupted. Wolves shouting, demanding justice, calling for Zaylen's execution. Roscoe let it continue for a moment before raising his hand for silence. Subject A, MS, he said quietly. Andrea Moonvale Shadowmere. This journal entry, written by Daxton Ironwood in his own hand, details a conspiracy to slowly murder a royal child while stealing her inheritance. Daxton could have written anything, Zaylen argued, but her voice had lost its confidence. He's trying to save himself by blaming me. Then explain this. Roscoe produced another document. Andrea recognized it immediately. Her father's letter. This was written by Alpha Supreme Elric Shadowmere days before his death. He explicitly names you, Zaylen Ashcroft, as a threat to his daughter. He details his discovery of your previous murders, your true intentions, your targeting of his family. Roscoe's eyes met Zaylen's. He knew what you were, and he died trying to protect Andrea from you. The silence in the hall was absolute. Zaylen's composure shattered completely. That letter proves nothing. Elric was paranoid at the end, seeing conspiracies everywhere. He was mentally unstable. Enough. Roscoe's voice carried supernatural command. Andrea's heart pounded as she stood. The walk to the center of the hall felt eternal, every eye on her, centuries of pack law and justice channeled through this moment. She stood before Zaylen, close enough to see the hatred burning in her stepmother's eyes, close enough to smell the fear beneath the rage. 18 years, Andrea said quietly. You spent 18 years trying to make me nothing. 18 years of poison and cruelty and systematic destruction. Why? Because you deserved it, Zaylen hissed. Because your mother took everything from me, and I made sure her daughter paid for it. The confession hung in the air. Several wolves moved to record it, to document the admission that would seal Zaylen's fate. My mother never did anything to you, Andrea said. She existed. Zaylen's composure was gone now, years of buried hatred finally erupting. Elvoria and I were half-sisters. Did you know that? Same father, different mothers. But father loved her mother, the blessed Luna, the perfect one. He barely looked at me. I was just the political necessity. She laughed, bitter and broken. And then Elvoria had to go and be moon goddess blessed too. Beautiful, powerful, loved by everyone. She got everything I wanted. Every honor, every privilege, every moment of father's pride. So you killed my father, Andrea said. You murdered Elric Shadowmere because I reminded you of her. I killed him because he was going to expose me, because he figured out what happened to my previous husbands, because he was changing his will to protect you. Zaylen's smile was terrible. And yes, because every time I looked at you, I saw her, perfect Elvoria, living on through her perfect daughter. I was 4 years old. I don't care, Zaylen screamed. You were her legacy, her blessing, her divine power passed down, and I swore I would destroy every trace of her, starting with you. But you didn't destroy me, Andrea said, her voice growing stronger. You tried for 18 years, and I'm still here, still standing, still Andrea Moonvale Shadowmere. You're nothing, Zaylen spat. You'll always be the worthless, wolfless girl I made you. No. Andrea touched the Shadowmere seal around her neck. I'm my father's daughter, my mother's legacy, and you have no power over me anymore. Roscoe stood, his presence filling the hall. Zaylen Ashcroft, you have confessed before witnesses to multiple murders, conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder of a royal heir. By the authority vested in me as Alpha King, I invoke blood trial. The hall's atmosphere shifted. Blood trial was ancient law, rarely used, carrying consequences that reached beyond simple punishment. Zaylen Ashcroft, kneel. The guards forced her to her knees. Zaylen fought, screaming curses, but the silver chains held her fast. Roscoe descended from the dais, his wolf surging so close to the surface that his form seemed to flicker. Power rolled off him in waves. Divine authority channeled through flesh, the moon goddess's judgment made manifest. By blood trial, I compel truth. You will answer, and you cannot lie. The command carried supernatural weight. Zaylen's mouth opened against her will, her own voice betraying her as Roscoe questioned her. Did you murder Elric Shadowmere? Yes. Did you poison Andrea Shadowmere for 18 years? Yes. Did you falsify royal documents to steal the Shadowmere inheritance? Yes. Did you murder your previous 3 husbands? Yes. Each answer was pulled from her throat, witnessed by hundreds of wolves who would carry this testimony across the kingdom. When Roscoe finally released the compulsion, Zaylin collapsed, gasping. "The blood has spoken," Roscoe declared. "Truth cannot be hidden before the moon's judgment. Zaylin, you are stripped of all titles, lands, and pack bonds. You are nameless. You are rankless. You are nothing." His voice echoed with supernatural authority as he pronounced sentence. "Your wolf is bound. You will never shift again. You will spend your remaining years as the lowest Omega in the kingdom, serving the pack in whatever capacity is required. You will experience every degradation you inflicted on others, every cruelty you dealt, every moment of suffering you caused." "No," Zaylin whispered. "Please, kill me. Don't make me live like that." "Death would be mercy," Roscoe said coldly. "And you deserve none. Guards, remove her." As Zaylin was dragged away screaming, Roscoe turned to address the remaining accused. Jexina and Ryder Ashcroft stepped forward. Andrea's breath caught. She hadn't seen her former step-siblings enter, but now they emerged from the crowd. Jexina looked terrified, all her earlier arrogance gone. Ryder just looked defeated. "You were raised by Zaylin," Roscoe said. "Children, when your fathers died, you had no reason to question her, but as adults, you made choices." "Ryder Ashcroft, what say you to the charge of complicity?" Ryder stepped forward, his head bowed. "I'm guilty. I knew about the silver tea. I saw Mother mixing it. I knew Andrea was being treated wrong, and I did nothing." "Why?" "Because I was afraid. Because Mother was all I had left. Because I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Andrea. It's not enough. I know. But I'm sorry." Andrea looked at him, this man who could have changed everything with a single word of intervention. She felt pity more than anger now. "Your honesty is noted," Roscoe said. "But complicity in these crimes still carries consequences. You are reduced to Omega rank. You will serve the pack for 5 years, during which time your actions will determine if you can regain higher standing." Ryder nodded, accepting his fate without argument. "Jexina Ashcroft," Roscoe's voice hardened. "You went beyond complicity. You actively participated in Andrea's humiliation. You forged letters, planted false evidence, attempted to frame her for theft and seduction." Jexina opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "You are exiled," Roscoe declared. "You may not enter any pack lands, may not claim pack protection, may not call upon pack law. You are rogue, and rogues are shown no mercy." "Please," Jexina finally found her voice. "I was following Mother's orders. I didn't know." "You knew enough," Andrea said quietly. "You enjoyed it, Jexina. Every cruel word, every humiliation. You liked making me feel small." Jexina had no response to that truth. Guards escorted both of them from the hall. Then it was just Andrea and Roscoe, standing in the center of hundreds of watching wolves. "The trial is concluded," Roscoe declared. "Justice has been served according to ancient pack law. Let the record show that Andrea Moonveil Shadowmere is confirmed as the rightful heir to the Shadowmere territories, daughter of Alpha Supreme Elric Shadowmere and Luna Elvoria Wolfheart, holder of divine blessing and royal bloodline." He turned to Andrea, and his expression softened. "And my fated mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself." The hall erupted in howls of approval and celebration, but Andrea barely heard it. She was staring at Roscoe, at the man who'd believed her, protected her, demanded justice on her behalf, the man who'd shown her what real love looked like. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Roscoe smiled, warm and genuine. "Now, if you're willing, we make our bond official. Now, we rule together. Now, you finally get to be who you were always meant to be." He held out his hand. Andrea took it. Chapter 6. The Luna's Crown. The coronation took place 3 days later. Andrea stood in the preparation chamber, staring at the gown laid out before her. White silk embroidered with silver thread, the Shadowmere sigil worked into the fabric with such skill it seemed to shimmer in the candlelight. It was beautiful beyond anything she'd ever imagined wearing. "You're quiet," Roscoe said from the doorway. Andrea turned. He wore his ceremonial robes, black and silver, the Alpha King in his full regalia. But his expression was gentle, concerned. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I've never even attended a proper ceremony before, and now I'm supposed to be crowned Luna Supreme? I don't know how to be a queen, Roscoe. I barely know how to be a person. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. You know how to survive. You know how to be kind despite cruelty. You know how to stand up for yourself and demand justice. Everything else, we'll figure out together. What if I fail? You won't. But even if you stumble, even if you make mistakes, I'll be right there beside you. His thumbs traced circles on the backs of her hands. Andrea, you've already proven you're strong enough for this. You survived 18 years of systematic destruction. Being a Luna? That's going to feel easy by comparison. Andrea wanted to believe him. She looked at the gown again, at the life it represented, a life she'd never dared dream about. Help me understand something, she said quietly. The mate bond, I feel it, constantly. This pull toward you, this sense of rightness. But is that real? Or is it just the bond making me feel things I wouldn't otherwise? Roscoe was quiet for a moment. The mate bond creates attraction. Yes, it draws two souls together. But what you feel beyond that, the trust, the affection, the genuine care, that's real, Andrea. That's you and me, not just the bond. He cupped her face gently. If you need time, if you want to slow things down, we can. I'm not going anywhere. The bond is permanent, but how we navigate it is up to us. Andrea closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. The bond hummed between them, warm and steady. But beyond that, she felt her own genuine attraction to this man who'd shown her nothing but respect and care, who'd demanded justice on her behalf without asking for anything in return. I don't want to slow down, she whispered. I want this. I want you. I'm just scared I'll wake up and find it was all a dream. Then let me prove it's real. Roscoe leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't their first kiss, but it was different from the tender comfort they'd shared before. This was deeper, more certain. A promise made and accepted. Andrea's hands came up to his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palms. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Still feel like a dream? Roscoe asked, his voice rough. Andrea laughed, the sound surprising her. When was the last time she'd really laughed? No, that felt very real. Good. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Now let's get you dressed. We have a kingdom to rule. The great hall had been transformed once again. Where judgment had taken place days ago, celebration now filled every corner. The space was decorated in white and silver, the Shadowmere colors, combined with the black and gold of the Alpha King. Wolves from across the kingdom had gathered, dressed in their finest, all come to witness the coronation of a Luna who'd returned from the dead. Andrea walked through the halls toward the great hall, her hands shaking despite Roscoe's reassuring presence beside her. The gown fit perfectly, flowing around her like water. Her hair had been arranged in an elaborate style, woven with silver chains and moonstone. She wore her mother's necklace, the Shadowmere seal resting against her heart. You look like moonlight given form, Roscoe said quietly. I feel like I'm going to faint. Don't. I'd have to catch you, and that would ruin the dramatic entrance. Andrea laughed despite her nerves. Practical as always. The doors to the great hall opened. The assembled wolves turned as one, and the hall fell silent. Andrea could feel hundreds of eyes on her, assessing, judging, wondering if the wolfless girl really deserved to wear a crown. But she lifted her head and walked forward with as much grace as she could manage. Because she wasn't the wolfless girl anymore. She was Andrea Moonveil Shadowmere, and she'd earned the right to be here. The walk to the dais felt eternal. But finally, they reached the front of the hall. Roscoe took his place on the throne while Andrea stood before him, following the ancient ritual. The pack's elder stepped forward, the same wolf who'd presided over Andrea's humiliating presentation just days ago. But now his expression held only respect. Andrea Moonveil Shadowmere, he intoned, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. You come before the pack to claim your birthright. You are daughter of Alpha Supreme, Elric Shadowmere, daughter of Luna Elvoria Wolfheart, carrier of divine blessing and royal blood. You are fated mate to Alpha King Roscoe Stormrider, chosen by the moon goddess herself. He held up a crown. It was ancient silver worked into a delicate circlet, set with moonstones that seemed to glow with inner light. The Shadowmere crown, passed down through generations of Lunas. Do you swear to lead with wisdom, to protect the weak, to uphold justice, and to serve the pack with all that you are? Andrea's voice rang out clear and strong. I swear it. Do you accept the responsibility of this crown, knowing that it comes with both great power and great burden? I accept it. Then by the authority of ancient pack law, by the blessing of the moon goddess, and by the will of the pack, I name you Luna Supreme. May you rule with strength and compassion in equal measure." The crown settled onto Andrea's head. It was heavier than she'd expected, but it felt right in a way she couldn't quite explain, like coming home after a very long journey. The hall erupted in howls of approval, the sound shaking the rafters. Roscoe stood and took Andrea's hand, helping her up the steps to stand beside his throne. Not behind him, not below him, but beside him. Partners. Equals. He addressed the pack, his voice carrying that Alpha King authority. "I present Luna Andrea Moonveil Shadowmere, my fated mate, your Luna Queen. She has endured more than most wolves will face in a lifetime, and she has emerged stronger for it. She will lead with the strength of her mother and the wisdom of her father, and any wolf who doubts her will answer to me personally." Andrea looked out over the assembled crowd. So many faces, so many wolves who would now look to her for leadership and guidance. It should have been overwhelming. Instead, it felt like purpose. "I have something to say," Andrea said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Roscoe nodded encouragement. Andrea took a breath and spoke. "I spent 18 years being told I was nothing, worthless, undeserving of even basic kindness. I believed those lies because I had no power to question them." She paused, making sure every wolf in the hall could see her face, could hear her words. "But I survived. And in surviving, I learned what real strength looks like. It's not the absence of fear. It's being afraid and refusing to let that fear control you. It's being hurt and choosing not to become cruel. It's being broken and deciding to heal instead of staying shattered." Andrea's hand touched the Shadowmere seal at her throat. "As your Luna, I make this promise. No wolf under my protection will be told they are nothing. No child will be treated as worthless. No Omega will suffer in silence. I don't care about your rank or your bloodline or how powerful your wolf is. If you're part of this pack, you matter." She looked directly at the section where she knew Ryder stood, serving out his Omega sentence. "And if you've made mistakes, if you've failed to act when you should have, there's still a chance for redemption. We all carry regrets. What matters is what we do moving forward." The hall was silent, wolves listening with complete attention. "I can't promise to be a perfect Luna," Andrea continued. "I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to need help. But I can promise to always try to do what's right, to protect those who need protecting, and to never forget where I came from." She turned to Roscoe, and her voice softened. "And I promise to rule beside my mate with honor, to be worthy of the trust he's placed in me, and to build a kingdom where love matters more than power." Roscoe's expression was filled with pride and something deeper, something that made the mate bond flare with golden warmth between them. "Then let it be known," he declared. "We rule together, King and Luna, partners in all things." The celebration that followed was unlike anything Andrea had ever experienced. There was food in abundance, music that made wolves want to dance, laughter echoing through halls that had held too much judgment recently. Andrea moved through the crowd with Roscoe beside her, accepting congratulations, meeting wolves who would now be her responsibility to protect and guide. Some looked at her with suspicion still, but most seemed genuinely happy to have a Luna again. "Andrea," she turned to find Ryder standing nearby, looking uncomfortable in his Omega servant's clothing. He kept his distance, respecting the boundaries his crimes had created. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. "Just for a moment?" Andrea looked at Roscoe, who nodded. "I'll be right here if you need me." She moved a few steps away with Ryder, though staying in Roscoe's line of sight. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," Ryder said without preamble. "I know I failed you in the worst possible way, but I want you to know I'm trying to do better, to be better." "Are you?" Andrea asked. "Or are you just serving your sentence?" "Both, maybe. But," he looked down at his hands, "I spent so many years being afraid of Mother that I forgot how to be anything else. Watching you stand up to her, watching you survive everything she did, it made me realize how much of a coward I've been. So don't be a coward anymore," Andrea said simply. "You have 5 years to prove you're worth redemption. Use them well." "I will." Ryder hesitated, then added, "Your father would be proud of you, the Luna you've become." Andrea's throat tightened. "Did you know him? My father?" "A little. He was kind to me when Mother first brought me into the household. Patient. He taught me how to carve wood, actually. Said it helped him think." Ryder pulled something from his pocket. "I found this while cleaning out Mother's things. I thought you should have it. It was a small carving, worn with age, a moon with a wolf howling at it. Her father's work. He was making this the night before he died, Ryder said quietly. He told me it was for his little moon. For you. Andrea took the carving with shaking hands, pressing it to her heart. Thank you. Ryder bowed and moved away, leaving Andrea alone with the small wooden moon and too many emotions to process. Everything all right? Roscoe appeared at her side. Yes. Andrea looked up at him, tears threatening. I think, for the first time in my life, everything might actually be all right. Later that night, after the celebrations finally ended, Andrea and Roscoe stood on the balcony of their shared chambers, looking out over the kingdom they would rule together. I can't stop thinking about her, Andrea admitted quietly. Zaylin. She's out there right now, scrubbing floors, being treated the way she treated me. Part of me feels guilty about it. Why? Roscoe asked. Because I know what that feels like. The humiliation, the powerlessness. I know how much it hurts. She leaned against the railing. And as much as I hate her, as much as she deserves punishment, I don't know if I can enjoy her suffering. That's what makes you different from her, Roscoe said. She enjoyed cruelty. You're capable of justice without becoming cruel yourself. That's going to make you a better Luna than she ever could have been. Andrea turned to face him. How do you do this? Carry the weight of so many decisions? So many lives depending on you? I remember why I'm doing it. Not for power or glory, but to protect, to serve, to make sure the pack is safe and thriving. He pulled her close. And now I have you to share that burden with. To remind me when I'm being too harsh or too lenient. To be the balance I need. I don't feel balanced, Andrea admitted. I feel like I'm barely holding everything together. That's because you're healing from 18 years of trauma. Give yourself time, Andrea. Give yourself grace. You don't have to be perfect right away. Andrea rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. The mate bond hummed between them, comfortable now, familiar. But beyond that, she felt genuine affection for this man who'd shown her what real love looked like. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For believing me, for demanding justice, for showing me I was never actually nothing. She looked up at him. For choosing me. I didn't choose you, Roscoe said gently. The moon goddess chose us for each other. But staying, learning to love you beyond the bond, building this life with you, that's a choice I make every day. And I'll keep choosing you, Andrea. Every single day. He kissed her then, tender and deep, and Andrea finally let herself believe that this was real, that she was safe, that she was loved, that she was finally, truly, home. Chapter 7. The Moon's Blessing. 6 months later, Andrea stood in the Shadowmere territories for the first time in 18 years. The lands were beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. Rolling hills covered in wildflowers, ancient forests where sunlight filtered through leaves like liquid gold, a crystal-clear lake that reflected the sky perfectly. This was her mother's homeland, her father's legacy, finally returned. It's more beautiful than I imagined, she said softly. Roscoe stood beside her, his hand warm in hers. Your father's estate is just over that ridge. We've been restoring it for months. It should be ready for you to move in next week. Andrea shook her head. I don't want to move in. I want it to be a place the pack can use. A memorial to my parents, but also somewhere living. Maybe a school? Or a healing center. Whatever you want, Roscoe said. These are your lands to do with as you wish. Andrea walked through the wildflowers, breathing in the scent of home she'd never known. Her wolf stirred contentedly, recognizing this place on some instinctive level. This was where she was meant to be. Tell me something, Andrea said, turning to face Roscoe. That first night, at the ceremony, when our eyes met, did you know? Did you feel the mate bond immediately? I felt something, Roscoe admitted. A pull I didn't understand at first. Your scent was suppressed by the silver in your system. But underneath it, I sensed something powerful. Something divine. My wolf recognized you even when I didn't fully understand why. And now? Now I can't imagine my life without you in it. He pulled her close. You've changed everything, Andrea. The way I lead, the way I think about justice, the way I see strength. You've made me a better alpha. I've made you worry constantly, Andrea corrected with a small smile. Every time I have a nightmare, every time I remember something painful, I don't mind worrying about you. That's what partners do. His hand came up to cup her face. And you've gotten so much stronger these past months. The way you handled that border dispute last week, The patience you showed with those young Omegas who were struggling with their training? You're already an incredible Luna. Andrea leaned into his touch, still marveling that she was allowed to have this, that someone could touch her with gentleness instead of cruelty, could look at her with love instead of contempt. I got a letter from Ryder yesterday, she said. He's 3 months into his sentence. Says the Omega work is teaching him humility he never learned growing up. Do you think you'll forgive him eventually? Maybe. Probably. He was a coward, but he was also a victim in his own way. Not the same kind of victim I was, but Zaylin twisted him too. Andrea sighed. I don't know if we'll ever be close, but I don't need to hate him forever. And Jexina? Exile suits her. The last report said she was seen heading toward the border territories, living as a rogue. Andrea's voice was matter-of-fact. I don't wish her dead, but I don't want her near me either. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, following a path through the trees that led down toward the lake. Andrea's mind drifted to the changes she'd implemented in the 6 months since her coronation. The Luna's court was now open twice a week, where any pack member could bring grievances directly to her. She'd established quarterly inspections of all pack households with children or wards, looking for signs of abuse or neglect. She'd created a fund for Omegas who wanted education or training beyond their traditional roles, giving them choices they'd never had before. Not everyone approved of her changes. Some of the older alphas thought she was too soft, too focused on protecting the weak instead of strengthening the strong. But Andrea didn't care. She'd been weak. She'd been powerless. She knew exactly what it felt like to have no one care about your suffering. Never again. Not in her pack. Your Majesty. Luna, Andrea. They turned to see Xavian running toward them, his expression urgent. Andrea's heart clenched. 6 months of relative peace, and now something was wrong. What is it? Roscoe asked, immediately alert. News from the Eastern Territories. There's been an incident involving Zaylin. Andrea's stomach dropped. What kind of incident? Xavian looked uncomfortable. She tried to escape her Omega assignment, claimed she'd rather die than continue serving the pack. She was caught before she reached the border, but she's refusing to eat, refusing to work. She says if we won't execute her, she'll starve herself to death. Andrea closed her eyes. Part of her wanted to say let her. Zaylin had chosen her fate when she'd chosen murder and cruelty. But another part, the part that made her a good Luna, knew they couldn't just let someone die by starvation in their custody. I need to see her, Andrea said quietly. Andrea, you don't have to. Roscoe started. Yes, I do. She's my responsibility now. All pack members are my responsibility, even the ones who destroyed my life. The Omega quarters in the Eastern Territory were simple but adequate, nothing luxurious, but far from the brutal conditions Zaylin had forced Andrea to endure. She had a bed, blankets, regular meals, and work that was honest if unglamorous. Andrea found her sitting on her cot, staring at nothing. 6 months of hard labor had changed Zaylin. Her beautiful face was harder now, her blonde hair dull, her hands rough from work, but the hatred in her eyes when she saw Andrea was exactly the same. Come to gloat? Zaylin asked. No. I came to understand. Andrea pulled a chair over and sat, maintaining distance but making eye contact. Why won't you eat? Because this isn't living. This is torture disguised as mercy. Zaylin's voice was bitter. You think you're so much better than me, forcing me to experience what I made you endure. But at least I had the courage to kill you quickly if the poison failed. You're making me suffer slowly. I didn't design your sentence to make you suffer, Andrea said quietly. I wanted you to understand, to experience what it feels like to be powerless, to have every choice taken away, to be treated as less than nothing. Well, congratulations. I understand. And I'd rather die than live another day like this. Andrea studied Zaylin's face, looking for any sign of remorse or genuine change. She found none, just rage and wounded pride and the same cold hatred that had driven 18 years of cruelty. You still don't see it, do you? Andrea said. You still think you're the victim here. I am a victim. Of your mother's perfection, of your father's blindness, of your pathetic need for revenge. I never wanted revenge, Andrea interrupted. I wanted justice. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting. Andrea stood, looking down at the woman who'd destroyed so much. You had choices, Zaylin. Every single day for 18 years, you made a choice to hurt me, to poison me, to tell me I was worthless. You chose cruelty over and over again, and you chose to destroy me over and over again with this sentence. No, Andrea said firmly. Your sentence gives you exactly what you refuse to give me, a chance to survive. Food, shelter, purpose. Is it comfortable? No. Is it what you deserve? Yes. But it's more mercy than you ever showed me. She moved toward the door, then paused. If you truly want to die, Zaylin, then die. I won't stop you. But don't pretend you're a victim when you finally have to face consequences for your actions. Andrea left before Zaylin could respond. Outside, Roscoe was waiting with Xavian. How did it go? She's not going to change, Andrea said, her voice heavy. She's never going to understand what she did wrong. She'll die believing she was justified. Then we let her make that choice, Roscoe said. You gave her the opportunity to survive with dignity. If she refuses it, that's on her. Andrea nodded, but the encounter left her feeling hollow. She'd hoped for something, maybe, remorse, understanding, some sign that Zaylin was capable of change, but some people were too broken by their own hatred to ever heal. 2 weeks later, word came that Zaylin had died in her sleep. Natural causes, the healer said. Her heart had simply stopped after weeks of refusing food and care. Andrea stood in Roscoe's office, holding the report, and felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not grief. Just a strange emptiness where 18 years of trauma had lived. I thought I'd feel something, she said quietly. Relief, maybe, or closure. But I just feel tired. Roscoe pulled her into his arms. Her death doesn't erase what she did. It doesn't give you back the childhood she stole. Of course you're tired, Andrea. You've been carrying her crimes for months while trying to build a better kingdom. Do you think I failed her? Andrea asked. Should I have done something differently? You gave her mercy she didn't deserve. You gave her chances she never gave you. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Andrea rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I keep thinking about my mother. About Elvoria. Zaylin was her half-sister. They shared blood, and Zaylin hated her so much that she destroyed her daughter out of spite. Your mother would be proud of you, Roscoe said gently, not just for surviving, but for refusing to become like Zaylin despite everything. How do you know? Because I'm proud of you. Because everyone who knows you is proud of you. Because you've taken every hurt, every painful memory, every cruel lesson, and you've used them to make sure no one else has to suffer the same way. Andrea pulled back to look at him. Thank you. For believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. Always, Roscoe promised. A month later, Andrea stood in the Great Hall once again, but this time for a celebration rather than a trial. The first class of students from the Shadowmere Memorial Academy was graduating. Young wolves who'd been given opportunities for education, regardless of their rank or bloodline. Andrea watched them receive their certificates, their faces glowing with pride and hope, and finally felt something like peace settle in her chest. This was her father's legacy, her mother's blessing, using power not to destroy, but to build, to protect, to make sure no child ever felt worthless again. They look happy, Roscoe observed from beside her. They are happy, and they're going to go out into the pack and make real changes, create better systems, challenge old prejudices. Andrea smiled. This is what I was meant to do. Not rule through fear, but lead through compassion. And you're incredible at it. After the ceremony, Andrea and Roscoe walked through the gardens that had been planted in her mother's honor. Moonflowers bloomed in silver and white, their fragrance sweet and peaceful. I've been thinking, Andrea said, about the future, about what comes next. And I want to expand the academy, create healing centers in every territory, establish a network of safe houses for wolves escaping abusive situations. Her voice grew stronger. I want to use my position to make systemic changes that will last beyond my lifetime. That's ambitious, Roscoe said, and I love it. We'll make it happen. Andrea stopped walking and turned to face him fully. I also want to tell you something. Something I should have said months ago but was too scared to admit. Roscoe's expression grew serious. What is it? I love you. The words came out simple and true. Not just because of the mate bond, not just because you saved me. I love who you are. Your strength and your gentleness, the way you lead with justice but temper it with mercy, the way you've never once made me feel less than you, even though you're the Alpha King and I'm still learning how to be a Luna. Andrea took his hands in hers. You've shown me what love should be, patient, kind, respectful, and I love you for it. I love you with everything I am. Roscoe's eyes shone with emotion. I love you too, Andrea. I have since the moment you stood up to Zaylin and demanded justice instead of revenge. since you showed more strength in your compassion than most wolves have in their entire lives." He pulled her close and kissed her, deep and thorough, the mate bond flaring golden between them. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "I have something for you," Roscoe said. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small wooden box. "Open it." Inside was a ring, simple silver, set with a moonstone that seemed to glow in the fading light. "It was your mother's," Roscoe explained. "Xavian found it in the recovered Shadowmere family treasures. Elvoria wore it as a symbol of her blessing, and I thought—" He paused. "I thought you might want to wear it as a symbol of everything you've overcome, everything you've become." Andrea's vision blurred with tears as Roscoe slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting all these years to return home. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "You're beautiful. And strong. And exactly the Luna this kingdom needs." Roscoe brushed away her tears gently. "And you're mine. Today, tomorrow, forever. If you'll have me, I'll have you," Andrea said. "For all my days." They stood together in the moonflower garden, surrounded by the scent of her mother's favorite flowers, and Andrea finally understood what her father had tried to tell her in that last desperate letter. She was moonlight itself, not because of her divine blessing or her royal bloodline, but because she'd taken every darkness thrown at her and refused to let it extinguish her light. She was Andrea Moonveil Shadowmere, daughter, Luna, survivor, beloved, and she was finally, truly, enough.